For nearly 3 decades, Henry Wallace believed he had been the anchor of his marriage. His relationship with Clara had weathered turbulent storms, a devastating miscarriage that shattered their dreams of a second child, relentless financial struggles that left them counting every penny, and the gradual erosion of youthful passion that once defined their union. To Henry, their bond was forged in resilience and love, a foundation strong enough to endure anything. But that belief was obliterated one fateful evening when Clara, her voice trembling and eyes downcast, admitted a secret she could no longer keep. It was not a confession born of anger or resentment, but of an aching void within her soul. She spoke of a yearning she couldn't silence, a desire to reclaim the vitality she had long since buried beneath the routines of their life. "I've forgotten what it feels like to be alive. Henry," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "and I don't know how to find myself anymore." Her words lingered like a thundercloud over their dimly lit living room. Henry was stunned, his mind racing to process the revelation. His wife's sorrow was real, palpable, and he felt powerless to reach her through the fog of her discontent. Their daughter, Lauren, had noticed Clara's despair long before Henry had. Lauren was bold, unfiltered in her opinions, and unapologetically modern in her views on relationships and personal fulfillment. "Mom," Lauren had once said during a rare heart-to-heart, "you can't spend your whole life sacrificing for others and forget about yourself. It's okay to want more." Lauren's advice took an unexpected turn. "Maybe you just need to do something drastic," she suggested one evening over tea. Clara, startled, asked what she meant. Like an adventure, Lauren shook her head. "No, I mean something to shake up your life, even if it's unconventional." Clara frowned. "I don't understand." Lauren hesitated before continuing. "Look, Mom, what I'm saying is maybe you need to feel wanted again, even if it's just for one night." The implication hit Clara like a cold gust of wind. "An affair," she said, disbelief etched in her voice. "Lauren, how could you suggest that?" "I'm not saying it lightly," Lauren replied, "but life's too short to be miserable, and you've been miserable for years. If there's even a chance this could help you find yourself again, why not consider it?" Clara's initial reaction was shocked, but the seed of the idea was planted. Over the following weeks, Lauren's words festered in her mind. She began to view her interactions with Alex, the widower who lived 3 streets over, through a different lens. Alex was kind, thoughtful, and bore the quiet strength of someone who had endured profound loss. His wife's battle with cancer had left him a grieving, yet empathetic man. They had shared brief conversations at neighborhood gatherings, but Clara had always dismissed any spark between them as harmless. As days turned into weeks, Clara's internal conflict deepened. The thought of reaching out to Alex felt absurd and wrong, yet it refused to fade. She found herself drawn to the idea, not out of malice or a desire to hurt Henry, but from a desperate need to reconnect with a part of herself she believed was lost. Lauren's encouragement replayed in her mind during quiet moments. "It's not about betraying Dad," Lauren had said, her tone firm. "It's about finding you, Mom. Sometimes you have to break the rules to rebuild yourself." One crispy evening, while Henry was busy fixing a leaky faucet in their upstairs bathroom, Clara stood in front of her bedroom mirror. She studied her reflection, the lines around her eyes, the faint streaks of gray in her hair, the tiredness she could no longer hide. She thought of the version of herself she used to be: vibrant, spontaneous, alive. The contrast was stark, almost unbearable. With trembling hands, she pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts. Alex's name stared back at her. She hovered over it, her pulse quickening, and then with a deep breath she pressed call. Alex answered after the second ring. His voice was warm, welcoming, but tinged with curiosity. "Clara, this is a surprise." She stumbled over her words at first, unsure how to begin. "Hi, Alex." "Hi. I was wondering if you'd like to meet up for coffee, maybe. Just a talk." There was a pause on the other end, then a soft chuckle. "Of course. When and where?" They agreed to meet the following afternoon at a quiet cafe on the edge of town. Clara spent the night tossing and turning, guilt and anticipation warring within her. By morning, she had convinced herself it was innocent, a simple conversation between friends. When she arrived at the cafe, Alex was already there, sitting at a corner table with a mug of steaming tea. He greeted her with a warm smile that eased some of her nerves. They talked for hours, their conversation flowing effortlessly. Clara found herself laughing at his dry humor and feeling seen in a way she hadn't in years. But the connection wasn't purely platonic. There was an unspoken energy between them, an undercurrent of something deeper. When Clara finally stood to leave, Alex hesitated before saying, "This was nice. I'd like to do it again sometime." Clara nodded, her heart pounding. "I'd like that too." Back at home, Henry was none the wiser. He was preoccupied with his plans to surprise Clara. He had noticed her growing distance, but assumed it was a result of their hectic lives. Determined to reignite their connection, he had been secretly organizing a romantic getaway to the countryside. Henry spent his evenings browsing online reviews of secluded cabins and searching for activities Clara might enjoy. He even wrote her a heartfelt letter, pouring out his love and gratitude for the years they had shared. The thought of seeing her smile again fueled his efforts. Unbeknownst to him, Clara was embarking on a journey that would shatter the very foundation of their marriage. Over the next few weeks, Clara and Alex's meetings became a regular occurrence. What started as coffee dates evolved into long walks, shared dinners, and moments of stolen intimacy. Each encounter made Clara feel more alive, but it also deepened the chasm of guilt she carried. She tried to rationalize her actions, telling herself it was temporary, a means of finding clarity. One night, as she stood on Alex's porch after an evening together, he reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her face. The gesture was tender, electric. Clara felt a rush of emotions she couldn't suppress. When their lips met, it was both exhilarating and devastating. Henry's carefully constructed plan unraveled the moment he received a text from Lauren. "Dad, I think you should know. Mom's with Alex tonight." The words hit him like a physical blow. At first, he dismissed it as a misunderstanding. Clara couldn't betray him like that. But the evidence was undeniable. Henry's heart raced as he dialed Lauren's number, his voice shaking with desperation. "What's going on, Lauren? Tell me this isn't true." Lauren's response was cautious, almost apologetic. "Dad, I don't want to tell you, but Mom's been struggling. She's trying to find herself again. Maybe this is her way of doing that." Henry's disbelief turned to anger. "Her way of doing that? By cheating on me, and you knew?" The conversation ended with harsh words, leaving Henry reeling. He paced the living room, memories of their life together flashing through his mind. The love, the sacrifices, the promises, they all felt meaningless now. Unable to contain his fury, Henry drove to Alex's house that night. When Alex opened the door, he barely had time to register Henry's presence before a fist connected with his jaw. Alex stumbled back, clutching his face in shock, but Henry didn't stay to witness the aftermath. He stormed away, his anger boiling over. Henry returned home and unleashed his grief in Clara's art studio. The room was a testament to their shared history. Paintings from vacations, portraits of their daughter, and pieces inspired by their life together one by one. He tore them from the walls, feeding them to a fire he had started in a metal bin. The flames consumed their memories, turning them to ash. When the destruction was complete, Henry wrote a short note and left it on the kitchen table. "Clara, you've broken my heart. I can't stay. Goodbye." The house was silent as Henry packed a small suitcase. Each item he folded felt like a fragment of his life slipping away. He grabbed his passport, tucked it into the bag, and walked out the door without a backward glance. The crisp night air bit at his skin as he climbed into his car, the engine's roar breaking the eerie quiet. He didn't know where he was headed, only that he couldn't stay. As dawn began to creep over the horizon, Henry found himself at a small airport on the outskirts of the city. He parked in the nearly empty lot, staring at the terminal in front of him. His mind drifted to a dream he had buried long ago, a trip to Portugal, where he could lose himself in the cobblestone streets, the sound of father music, and the rolling vineyards. Using the last of his savings, Henry purchased a one-way ticket to Lisbon. It was a reckless decision, but recklessness felt better than the suffocating pain of betrayal. Hours later, he was airborne, the familiar contours of his life shrinking beneath him as the plane soared into the clouds. He felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow, unsure of what lay ahead. Back at home, Clara returned from Alex's house to a scene she could never have imagined. The studio, her sanctuary, was in ruins. The acrid scent of smoke filled the air, and her artwork lay in charred fragments across the floor. The devastation was overwhelming, but it was a note on the kitchen table that brought her to her knees. Henry's words pierced her heart. She clutched the paper, her hands trembling, and read it over and over, hoping it might say something different if she looked hard enough. But the message was clear. He was gone. Panic set in. Clara called Henry's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. She tried Lauren, but her daughter's response was cold and distant. "Mom, I don't know what to say. You've ruined everything." Clara sat on the floor of the studio, surrounded by the remnants of her life, tears streaming down her face. Guilt and regret engulfed her, and for the first time, she truly grasped the magnitude of what she had done. Meanwhile, Henry arrived in Lisbon, a city that seemed both foreign and welcoming. He wandered through the narrow streets of Alfama, the oldest district, letting the unfamiliarity wash over him. He rented a modest apartment above a small cafe, where the scent of freshly baked pastries greeted him every morning. The change of scenery gave him a sense of freedom he hadn't felt in years. Henry found solace in the simplicity of his new life. He began teaching English at a local language school, connecting with students from all walks of life. Among them was Sophia, a middle-aged woman with a sharp wit and a kind heart. She owned a bookstore down the street and often invited Henry for coffee after class. Their friendship blossomed over time, marked by shared stories and quiet moments. Sophia never pried into Henry's past, and he appreciated her respect for his boundaries. She had a warmth about her that reminded him of what it felt like to be truly seen and valued. Back home, Clara struggled to rebuild her life in Henry's absence. The financial strain was immediate and devastating. Henry had drained their joint accounts and put the house up for sale, leaving her with little to fall back on. Even Alex, who had once seemed like a source of comfort, grew distant. The weight of their actions had fractured whatever connection they once shared. Lauren, too, pulled away. She blamed herself for encouraging Clara to take such a drastic step and couldn't bear to face the consequences. Clara found herself alone, grappling with the fallout of her choices. Each day brought new challenges. The bills piled up, her social circle dwindled, and the isolation became suffocating. Clara threw herself into her work, hoping to distract herself from the emptiness, but even that provided little relief. Months passed, and Henry's life and Lisbon began to take on a new rhythm. He found joy in small things. Walking along the Tagus River at sunset, discovering hidden corners of the city, and sharing quiet evenings with Sophia. Though he rarely thought about Clara anymore, there were moments when memories of their life together crept in. They no longer brought pain, but a bittersweet sense of closure. One evening, as he and Sophia shared a bottle of wine on our bookstore's rooftop, she asked, "Do you ever think about going back?" Henry shook his head. "There's nothing left for me there. My life is here now." Sophia nodded, her gaze thoughtful. "Sometimes, the only way to heal is to let go completely." Her words resonated with Henry. For the first time in years, he felt truly at peace with his choices. Back in the small town they had once called home, Clara's life continued to unravel. The house was sold, and she moved into a cramped apartment on the edge of town. She tried to reach out to Henry, hoping for a chance to apologize and make amends, but he remained unreachable. One day, while cleaning out an old box of belongings, Clara found a photo of them from their early years of marriage. They were laughing on a beach, the sun casting a golden glow over their faces. The sight of it brought fresh tears to her eyes. She realized then that she had lost not just her husband, but a part of herself she could never reclaim. Henry's journey of self-discovery continued. He began writing about his experiences, penning essays and short stories that reflected the twists and turns of his life. His work gained a modest following, and for the first time, he felt a sense of purpose beyond his past. Sophia encouraged him to embrace his new identity, and together they explored the possibilities of the future. Though their relationship remained platonic, there was an undeniable bond between them, a connection born of mutual respect and understanding. In time, Henry found himself standing on a beach in Cascais, the sun setting over the Atlantic. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his old life finally lived. For the first time in decades, he felt free. As weeks turned to months, Clara's life became a quiet routine of solitude and self-reflection. The vibrant, dynamic woman she once was felt like a distant memory. She spent her evenings journaling, hoping to make sense of the wreckage and find a way forward. Her guilt over what she had done to Henry weighed heavily, but she knew that dwelling on the past wouldn't bring him back. One afternoon, she received a letter in the mail with no return address. Her heart raised as she opened it, hoping it might be from Henry. Inside was a single page with his unmistakable handwriting. "Clara, I don't know if this letter will bring you closure or more pain, but I felt it was necessary. I've spent the past year rebuilding myself in a place far removed from our life together. For a long time, I carried the weight of anger and betrayal, but I've come to realize that clinging to that only chained me to the past. I loved you deeply, and I don't regret the years we shared. But what happened between us was a breaking point, and it forced me to reevaluate everything I believed about myself and our marriage. I found peace here, and I hope you can find the same someday. This letter isn't a doorway to reconciliation. It's my final goodbye. I wish you well. Henry." Clara clutched the letter, her hands trembling as tears spilled onto the page. It was a bittersweet relief to know that Henry had found peace, even if it meant he was truly gone from her life. She folded the letter carefully and placed it in a keepsake box alongside their old photo. It was a small way of holding on to what once was while accepting that it was now only a memory. In Lisbon, Henry continued to thrive in his new life. His writing gained recognition, and his essays were published in local magazines. The stories resonated with readers, many of whom saw in his words the universality of heartbreak and the possibility of renewal. One evening, as he was closing up the language school, Sophia approached him with a familiar twinkle in her eye. "You've been hiding something from me," she teased, holding up a copy of a magazine with his name on the cover. Henry laughed, a genuine, unguarded sound that felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. "I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. It is a big deal," she insisted, her smile widening. "You've turned your pain into something beautiful." Her words stayed with him as he walked home that night. For so long, Henry had defined himself by the roles he played: husband, father, provider. Now, for the first time, he felt defined by his own identity, untethered from the expectations of others. Clara, meanwhile, began the slow process of rebuilding her life. She started volunteering at a local community center, teaching art classes to children. The work gave her a sense of purpose, a way to channel her creativity, and reconnect with a part of herself she had neglected for years. Over time, she developed friendships with other volunteers, finding solace in their shared experiences. They encouraged her to showcase her art again, and she reluctantly agreed to host a small exhibition at the center. It was a modest affair, but the positive feedback she received reignited her passion for painting. Though she still thought of Henry often, Clara came to understand that their separation was a catalyst for her own growth. She regretted the pain she had caused him, but she knew she couldn't rewrite the past. All she could do was move forward. Years later, on a sunny afternoon in Cascais, Henry sat at a seaside cafe with Sophia. They watched the waves roll in, the salty breeze carrying the sounds of laughter from nearby families. Henry's phone buzzed with a message, a photo from his editor of the cover of his first published book. The title was simple, yet profound, breaking, and becoming. Sophia raised her glass in a toast. To new beginnings, Henry clinked his glass against hers, a contented smile on his face. To finding ourselves, Clara's journey also led her to new horizons. Her art gained recognition in local galleries, and she even hosted workshops to help others explore their creativity. She had found peace in her solitude, learning to embrace her independence, and the lessons life had taught her. On the anniversary of what would have been her and Henry's 35th wedding year, Clara visited the beach where they had taken the photo she cherished. She stood barefoot in the sand, letting the waves lap at her feet. Closing her eyes, she whispered, "Thank you, Henry, for everything." Though their lives had taken separate paths, both Henry and Clara had found healing in their own ways. They had learned that even in the face of heartbreak and loss, it was possible to rebuild, to grow, and to find joy again. The scars of their past were permanent, but they no longer defined them. Instead, they were reminders of their resilience and the strength it took to begin anew. In the end, what mattered most was not what they had lost, but what they had gained, a sense of self, a renewed purpose, and the ability to face the future with hope.